Hello YouTube, how's everyone doing? It's Professional here. Welcome back to my playthrough of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. I'm sorry this part got delayed by 2 days. I've just been busy with a few things, but we're continuing from where we left off here, and we're going to be continuing the final trial in the game. This could be the final part, I don't know if it is, or there might be one other part after this. I don't know how close we are to the end, but I know we're there. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoy this, and if you guys enjoy this series, please do drop a like because it does help this series out a lot. So the Resolve of Ryunosuke Naruhodo, Trial Part 2. We're at trial now. Let's see how this goes. 4th November, 9:30 a.m. The Old Bailey. Courtroom. Before we begin today, I have a brief announcement. As with the closed trial 10 years ago, some astonishing facts have come to light in these proceedings. The revelation that the well-known Reaper is actually an organization illegally executing its own brand of justice, and the discovery that a respected yard inspector was at his heart until he himself perished in an assassination plot. I wonder if Gregson really was part of this Reaper organization. Well, I say to all members of the judiciary here present on this occasion that we will stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Yeah, and I think that you are actually part of those disturbing findings, Strongheart. I think that he's in on it. That's what I think. Counsels, you will undertake this trial with the resolve to pursue the truth to the bitter end. Resolve, yes. That's my intention, and that's what the final case is called, the Resolve of Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Wonder what's with Kazuma, what his plan is. My lord, if I may inquire, the defendant may speak. On what grounds is Kazuma Asogi permitted to continue on his role as prosecutor? That's actually, this is actually a really good point. This is a really good point, because this is the part of Ace Attorney that's like a really unrealistic, because in real life, somebody like Kazuma, they wouldn't be the prosecutor in a case like this, because they're too personally attached to this case. Barrick is the prosecutor who actually had prosecuted Kazuma's father and had sentenced him to death as a result of it. So a prosecutor would never be this heavily involved in a case. The prosecutor would never have any kind of personal attachment to the case, not to witnesses, definitely not to the defendant. They would have no personal attachments to the case whatsoever. So this is actually a really good point. But this is done primarily for entertainment. That's why. But in reality, something like this would not happen. He has admitted to colluding with the victim in a plot to assassinate an innocent man. He shouldn't be enjoying the privilege of freedom, let alone be leading the prosecution. Yeah, and Barrick is 100% right on that there. I submitted a written petition to Lord Strongheart, requesting that judgment of my transgressions be delayed by 1 day. You did what? In today's proceedings, I intend to expose everything. My whole life, for the last 10 years, has all been leading up to this 1 day. Kazuma. Whatever the outcome of this trial, I give my word that I will accept whatever punishment is deemed appropriate, however severe. And I suggest you prepare yourself for the same, Reaper. But Barrick isn't the Reaper. Kazuma is bristling with hostility today. I get the distinct impression we're heading into a very dangerous territory, yep. Is that really even Kazuma-sama standing before us? As an extreme exception to normal practices, I've granted this prosecutor's request. The defense finds this acceptable, I presume? No. Yes, my lord. It's for entertainment. It will be like no, it's like he's already admitted to literally colluding in the case, and also because he's personally attached to it. This it wouldn't really work like this in real life, but it's for entertainment. But it is a good story though. In that case, in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session again. Oh, here we go. We resume the close hearing of Barrick Van Zeeks. The defense is ready, my lord. The prosecution is more than ready. Very well then. This preamble has taken long enough. Prosecutor Asogi, begin. As you wish, my lord. The prosecution calls the first witness to the stand. Oh great, who is this gonna be? I'm scared. Brings Shishiro Jigoku into the courtroom. Oh no. At last then, we've reached the final battle. I feel like Jigoku is gonna be a really hard witness to interrogate. He's putting literally everything on the line now in order to get to the truth. Come on, Ryunosuke. It's time for that steely resolve, because this is going to test it to the limit. Oh, here we go. By the way, when somebody has their hands like this, when they're talking to you, that not always, but it inclines that they're very confident in themselves. It inclines that it doesn't mean that they're lying or that they're telling the truth, but what it means is that they're very confident in themselves. It means that they feel like they can't get in trouble. That's what body language is also, key in a lot of, police stuff. Witness, state your name and occupation for the court. Ha. So it was you who issued this, was it? You're a subpoena. I did what was necessary. Well, look what the young man has become. I didn't think I'd see the day when you take that tone with me, I must say. The witness will ensure his responses are pertinent to questions asked. My name is Shishiro Jigoku, a Supreme Court judge from the Empire of Japan. 16 years ago, this man came to London as a visiting student. 6 years later, he returned to Japan. As well as presiding over the Supreme Court, he is also currently Japan's Minister of Foreign Affairs. You know what I'm really curious about? What I'm really curious about is whether he's a serial killer. That's what I wonder. Whether he was the real serial killer and Kazuma's father might have been innocent. That's what I think might have happened here. Because I don't think Mikotoba could have been the serial killer, definitely not. I think that it could be Jigoku. I am of course fully aware of Mr. Jigoku and his eminent roles. I invited him personally to the International Forensic Science Symposium as a representative of his country. I hear he also played a key role in the conclusion of the Anglo-Japanese Treaty of Friendship and Navigation. It was a great honor to be involved in the negotiations. I put my all into that treaty. Judge Jigoku, I must ask. Well, I never. Fancy the young murdering student turning up here of all places. I was innocent of that. Ryunosuke was innocent. You can't, that's not... You acquitted me yourself. And now, I'm a practicing defense lawyer. Yes, and full of self-importance like your friend across the courtroom, I see. So he's very confident in himself. You came here to London by invitation to the International Forensic Science Symposium. But then, without informing anyone of your plans, you took flight to France. Took flight? I'd have to object to that turn of phrase. No, you pretty much fled. So I was right in my assumption. He's very confident in himself. Then explain yourself. What exactly were the circumstances? Well, I was somewhat expecting this. And I'm sorry to say, I declined to comment. Okay, well look, for he doesn't really. I mean, depending on the situation, he doesn't really have to answer the question. But the thing is, though, you have 3 witnesses that he was trying to flee to France. You literally had 3 witnesses. You had Yujin Mikotoba, you had Herlock Sholmes, and then you also had Strongheart, who Strongheart was part of the plot to help him escape. And so Strongheart could easily be brought in as a witness, being told, that he was trying to help a criminal, escape. And so literally, you have 3 potential witnesses that all say this guy was trying to flee to France. And now this guy's like, I declined to comment. So you could easily bring those 3 people in and just have them corroborate that the guy was actually trying to flee. What? Leaving the country prematurely when I was an invited guest may be questionable etiquette. But my decision is unrelated to this case. I can't be bound to testify. Yep, he's very confident in himself. Unrelated, you say? I appreciate that a respected police inspector has been killed, for which I offer my condolences. However, being an alien, I'd obviously never met the man, nor do I know the first thing about him. The bullet was in the hole in his room. Is he forgetting that? There's forensic evidence that ties him to the murder of Gregson. As such, I'm in no position to testify. It's as simple as that. No, wrong. He was literally, the bullet that killed Gregson is in the wall in his room. There's literally evidence there that Gregson was probably killed in his room, and Gregson's body was kept in the fridge on the ship. So no, it's like, I'm not in no position to, no. So you would run from all this. I beg your pardon. This case is far more reaching than the murder of Inspector Gregson. It has ties to another murder, a case that was tried in Japan almost a year ago now. A year ago in Japan. The murder of Dr. John H. Wilson, you mean? That's right. And you, Judge Jigoku, are at the heart of both cases. The defense has evidence to prove it. Well, Ryunosuke, I see from the look in your eyes that you're resolved to carry this through to the very end, too. Let's see your evidence, then. What proof do you have that Shishiro Jigoku is involved in this case? A telegram from Inspector Hosonaga with details of the telegram he managed to locate by stealing it to Judge Jigoku's office. This, the hit list. The assassins at the top. The assassins are Kei Asogi and Ace Shin, but, Kazuma was apparently pretending to be an assassin. And the targets were Gregson and John Wilson. Both of those targets are dead now.
Take that!
This is a telegram detailing a communication sent between Britain and Japan approximately 1 year ago now. The communications contained 4 names. Kei Asogi, Ace Shin, T. Gregson, and J. Wilson. You little, look at how mad he's getting now. We confronted him with evidence. Where did you get that? So, remember, in the case 10 years ago, he was testifying in the serial killer's case, apparently on behalf of the defendant. And he got so mad during the testimony, that the cross-examination, that he actually smashed the witness stand. And it looks like he's going to do the same thing again. In Tokyo. From your office, Judge Jigoku. What? How on earth did you... What's all this all about? Why is my name on that list? This list of 4 names follows a certain pattern. T. Gregson and J. Wilson are the names of victims. Kei Asogi and Ace Shin are the names of assassins. No. A year ago in Tokyo, Dr. John H. Wilson's life was taken in a Western-style restaurant in the capital. The culprit was found to be a visiting student who went by the name of Giselle Brett, but she was really Ace Shin, Asa Shin. But her real name was Asa Shin, yep. A professional killer sent on a mission to kill from Great Britain. Ace Shin and her victim, J. Wilson. And the murder that just took place here in London was a counterpart to that crime. An assassin sent from Japan, also a visiting student, Kazuma Asogi, whose victim was the British police inspector, Tobias Gregson. Kei Asogi and T. Gregson, one assassin from each country to kill a target residing in the other. What exactly is the defense suggesting? These 2 cases of murder, one that took place in Britain and one in Japan, were masterminded by a pair of individuals from each country as a form of assassin exchange. And it was probably Judge Jigoku was probably the guy who plotted it in Japan, and Lord Strongheart is probably the guy who plotted it in Britain. And the telegram the defense has acquired is proof of this international contract to kill. What? What? The telegram was found in your office, Judge Jigoku. In other words, the mastermind in Japan was you. Judge Jigoku, what's this all about? Whenever that music plays means something bad's about to happen. And you, Kazuma, you lied. During yesterday's proceedings, you acknowledged that you'd accepted the assassination mission, but the mark wasn't Judge Jigoku at all. It was Tobias Gregson, Detective Inspector of Scotland Yard, as shown by the name on the killing contract. Very impressive, Ryunosuke. But actually, I didn't lie. The name of the target I was ordered to kill never passed my lips yesterday. The idea that Shishiro Jigoku was the mark came entirely from you. Ah, you deliberately avoided saying a name. The defense claims these 4 names indicate some sort of international assassin exchange. It's a giant conspiracy. I'm sure I speak for all present when I say that the very idea seems utterly absurd. No, it's the truth, Lord Strongheart, and you're part of it. You're in on this. Well, Mr. Jigoku, what do you have to say for yourself? His silence only goes to prove his guilt. There's another very important point that this new development brings to light. There's now a distinct possibility that the scene of Inspector Gregson's actual murder was in the witness's cabin aboard the SS Grouse. Judge Jigoku, you have to testify now. To refuse would put you in contempt of court. What's so funny? There's no need for quite such a vicious stare, young man. Very well then. As a parting gift to you all, I'll tell you everything I know. It seems this Japanese gentleman has information that the court must hear about the alleged assassin exchange and the events of the night of 31st of October. Present your formal testimony now. As you wish, my lord. I got a bad feeling about his testimony. I feel like he's going to be a very difficult witness to work with. And he's not just a witness, he's part of this crime, the assassin exchange. It's true that Kazuma Asogi was assigned the assassination mission 1 year ago now. The target was Inspector T. Gregson. That was a condition of the British study tour. However, in the end, something happened that meant the young man was unable to carry out his mission. On the evening in question, a member of the crew was on duty outside my cabin at all times. If there had been a shot fired, the crewman would have heard it. So clearly, I can't be involved. No, there was a shot in... There's proof that there's a bullet hole in your wall that you tried to cover up. So you admit it then. As this communication suggests, there really was an assassin exchange agreement between Britain and Japan. A political endeavor at the highest levels. Not something I can discuss here. To use such a worthy practice as a foreign study to coerce somebody to commit murder. It's the most appalling thing I've ever heard. Yup, Susato was 100% correct there. It's disgusting. Appalling. Well, it's easy to judge. Pardon? Asogi had a reason for taking his sword to that British inspector, you know. What? Which is why he accepted the mission in the first place. Isn't that right, Counsel? What's this about? Kazuma-sama? Judge Jigoku, if you are the mastermind behind this operation in Japan, then tell the court the identity of your counterpart in Britain. I'm not obliged to divulge that information. Yeah, and that person is Lord Strongheart. I feel it in my gut really strongly. As I said yesterday, I've killed nobody. I freely admit that I accepted the mission, but on the night the plan was to be executed, I backed out. In short, this assassin exchange that the defense has identified is unrelated to the events of the case. The crucial point is this. Your police inspector can't have perished aboard that steamship in Dunkirk, because if he'd been shot in the cabin, it's inconceivable that a member of the crew wouldn't have heard it. That's right. Gregson was killed after returning to London, in the room on Fresno Street. No, he wasn't. He was killed on the ship, and the perpetrator of the crime was the Reaper, Barrick Van Zeeks. No, it's not Zeeks. The prosecution's accusation remains unchanged. To think that a seemingly innocent foreign exchange program was a facade for such Machiavellian dealings. Machiavelli was the author of The Prince, so he was a philosopher, a well-known, writer in Renaissance Italy. He wrote about politics. He wrote about what kind of leader a prince should be. And a lot of people at that time period didn't like Machiavelli. The church really didn't like him. He was basically an outcast. So Machiavelli was a very smart man, but a lot of people at that time did not like him. And so, basically, you know, when they're talking about, like, conspiracies, they're referring to Machiavelli, in that regards. Clearly, it's a plot only a government minister and high-ranking judge as a witness could hope to execute. Well, I seem to recall that it was someone on the British side who controlled everything. Be that as it may, it's not the place of this court to pursue, this villainous assassination exchange plot. We are concerned only with the tangible evidence pertaining to the murder of Inspector Gregson. Is the defense clear on that point, counsel? Yes, my lord. I'll keep that in mind as I cross-examine the witness. This is going to be a very difficult cross-examination, I feel. The assassin exchange. It's true that Kazuma Asogi was assigned the assassination mission 1 year ago now.
Hold it!
A year ago, when Kazuma was still in Japan then. Correct. It was at that examination center for applicants for the study tour that I approached him. I'll never forget it. I remember exactly what you said. You just came out and asked me forthright if I'd consider traveling to Britain on an assassination mission. Surely not. I thought it was a joke at first, of course, but then it was made clear to me that if I didn't accept, I wouldn't be considered for the study tour. So you agreed to it just for that? I mean, I know how much you wanted to study in England, but an assassination? The Empire of Japan had accepted a proposal from the British Empire at the time. An agreement to send a student from each country to the others to deepen cultural understandings and friendship. But behind the scenes, the chosen students were to be given assassination missions. I had no choice but to accept the proposal that originated from my British counterpart. Why? Why didn't you expose the plot there and then? Britain acknowledges no part in these alleged misbegotten dealings. I advise you not to make spurious allegations, Foreign Minister Jigoku. As a witness, I am bound to tell the truth, my lord. Anyway, I picked Asogi, and I explained the details of the plan to him. The target was Inspector Tobias Gregson. That was a condition of the British study tour.
Hold it!
Why Kazuma? Why did you pick him as the assassin? He was the most capable of all the applicants, and in addition, I knew his desire to travel to Britain was very strong. In fact, it was almost more than a desire, it was his whole purpose in life. Yes, as his best friend, I could certainly attest to that. The way he threw himself into his studies, the way he pursued becoming qualified as a lawyer. It was all ultimately for that one single goal of being accepted on a study tour to Britain. And of course, we know the reason behind that. He was determined to find out for himself the truth about his father, Gregson Asogi. There's nothing I wouldn't have done to get here, be that agreeing to assume the role of an assassin, or betraying people's trust. Well, you certainly did a fine job of betraying mine, Asogi. But why? Why was Inspector Gregson the target? I have no idea. Those were the orders from Britain. I was in no position to question them. You have no idea, really? I find that hard to believe, exactly. Oh, do you? Judge Jigoku was once a visiting student here in Britain himself, of course. Perhaps he has some connection with Inspector Gregson from that time. The defense really ought to catch up. With what? With the fact that the assassin exchange has absolutely nothing to do with the case under scrutiny here. Oh, come on. That's absolute nonsense. That's nonsense from Judge Jigoku. Yes, I've already admitted to recruiting Asogi, and to see, this is why you can't trust anyone in Ace Attorney. There's very few people that you can actually trust in Ace Attorney. You can obviously trust your friends like Susato and Herlock Sholmes, but you can't, like other people, you can't trust them. And it's like, a lot of you guys, like, I was reading the comments, and a lot of you guys actually said you thought Judge Jigoku was a good guy, and you were actually shocked by this, that he was involved in this. However, in the end, something happened that meant the young man was unable to carry out his mission.
Hold it!
I presume you're referring to the incident that occurred during Kazuma's passage to Britain in January. The awful tragedy that took place on the steamship. Word arrived at the ministry some 2 weeks after the ship's departure from our shores. The visiting student had been killed, but his body had somehow gone missing in Hong Kong. The news was wired to me from a detective I'd placed on the ship to accompany the assassin. Obviously, Kazuma didn't actually die at all, but he did lose his memory, including all details about his special mission. Did you not consider dispatching another assassin at that point? That wasn't possible, simply because that black-clad young student over there had already put himself forward as Asogi's replacement, and there was no way to stop him from reaching Britain. My hands were completely tied. So Mr. Sholmes' strategy worked perfectly. He predicted everything that would happen. So it looks like Mr. Sholmes was actually pretending to be dumb in a lot of his deductions, but he's actually a genius. Months later, my memory returned, but I never intended to go through with the assassination mission anyway. So you were playing me right from the outset, were you? Is that it? I'd sooner be guilty of that crime than of taking someone else's life. I was prepared to do whatever I had to in order to get myself here to Britain. This line of questioning has gone on long enough. All the court should be concerned about in this testimony given by the witness are details relating to his relationship with Inspector Gregson and the victim's murder. Now you see, Strongheart is doing this on purpose. He doesn't want this conspiracy talked about because he's in on it. He's in on it. I feel it in my gut that he's in on it. He's part of this plot. And the thing about this is, he says it's not relevant to the case. We're only going to talk about Gregson's murder. But literally, the assassin exchange said that Gregson was a target. So it's very much relevant. Somebody was out to get Gregson. It's relevant. In that case, as I've already made perfectly clear, I had no connection to the man or his death. And you have some means of substantiating this plea? On the evening in question, a member of the crew was on duty outside my cabin at all times.
Hold it!
Who, Strongheart? The same guy you paid off? Outside your cabin in the first-class area of the SS Grouse, you mean. He paid off the crew member outside his cabin. Herlock Sholmes already proved that. Yes, that's right. Not least because there was a murder of a student passenger earlier in the year, I imagine. The liner operators have taken to posting a crewman outside every first-class cabin door. I can confirm the presence of the crewman guard myself. What do you mean? Because I accompanied Inspector Gregson to Dunkirk that night. I witnessed it with my own eyes. There was a well-built crewman standing guard directly in front of the door to the witness's cabin. But he was paid off by Jigoku. At that particular time, of course, I'd gone to the ship's dining room for dinner. The inspector and I asked the crewman to allow us into the cabin while waiting for Judge Jigoku's return. I suppose Inspector Gregson was there in his capacity as a Reaper. He was intending to take the witness's life. Exactly. As I've said numerous times now, I had no intention of killing anyone. So the crewman let two potential assassins into the cabin he was supposed to be guarding. Not the most convincing of sentries, really. In truth, those were my thoughts too. But anyway, I stayed to talk with Inspector Gregson for a short while. And then I left him there, and made my way off the ship alone. Was the guard still at the door when you went? Yes. He glared at me as I walked past. You see? That proves it. No, it doesn't. If there had been a shot fired, the crewman would have heard it. So clearly I can't be loved. And what a scumbag, this guy's laughing about somebody's death.
Hold it!
The crewman who was standing directly outside your cabin door, you mean? That's right. A muscular man with a permanent grim expression on his face. He didn't once move from that spot. To be honest, I thought he was a miserable fellow. But as it happens, he's a vital witness now. There's no doubt that Gregson was killed by a gunshot. And it's inconceivable that a crewman standing just outside the cabin door wouldn't have heard that. He did hear that, he's just choosing not to say it. But wait, what about the ship's enormous steam engines? Sorry guys, a little thirsty. When you're reading a lot, like, you want to get something to drink. But wait, what about the ship's enormous steam engines? Well, you know, you wouldn't really hear that on the floor where the steam engines, The thing is, though, is the richer people on these type of ships would usually be on top. They would be top deck. Where the poorer people, you know, the working class, they would usually be in rooms, you know, below the ship, near the engine room. So the more richer rooms, they wouldn't really be near the engine room, so you wouldn't really hear it. The noise of them could have drowned out the sound of the gun being fired. Sadly, young judicial assistant, that won't wash. Oh? You will recall that my cabin was in the first class area of the ship, which is also, of course, the quietest. Don't imagine for a moment that it's anything like steerage where the judicial assistants go. So see, I was right, like what I just said. In that time period, you know, poor people, especially, you know, working class people, were treated pretty badly. Really badly. Like, especially like the rooms on a ship like that for the working class would be atrocious. They would be really bad conditions. Don't imagine for a moment that it's anything like steerage where the judicial assistants go. I didn't mean... Wow. So literally, Jigoku just insulted her over being in because Susato's cabin was lower deck, and he basically said to her like where the judicial assistants go. It's like he just insulted her. It's just, but a hole like that made by a bullet was found in your cabin, Judge Jigoku. That's compelling evidence that a gun was fired in there. What's that? A bullet hole? Oh yes. You're talking about what the detective uncovered in the wall yesterday, I presume. That was obviously a rotten panel eaten out by a woodworm. No doubt he didn't find an actual bullet. No. That's the hole in this argument. It was eaten by a worm? That's one of the stupidest arguments that I've heard. You know, dog eating your homework is a better argument than that. Sadly, I was unable to arrange for the crewmen to be brought back to Britain with me. But obviously, if a gun had been fired in my cabin on the night in question, the defense implies, I would have been arrested on the spot and would never have made it to Britain in the first place. Very true. The witness's logic is sound, since no gunshot was heard from the witness's cabin on the night in question. We must assume that the witness is telling the truth. He's not. I'm glad you've seen sense, my lord. I know Kazuma's already admitted to taking on this incredible assassination plot, but even so, hearing it confirmed by somebody else is still a real shock. It's unforgivable, using Kazuma-sama's feelings to manipulate him into agreeing to such a despicable plan. But I think Kazuma manipulated Judge Jigoku too. He completely double-crossed him. Oh dear, it's hard not to see that as a stroke of brilliance on Kazuma's part. One way or another though, Gregson ended up dead. I really think that the murder must have happened aboard that steamship. So you mean, Judge Jigoku must be lying. He is. I know I shouldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment. But you must destroy him, Mr. Naruhodo. We're going to, Susato, don't worry. Okay, let's see here. We have to prove, Now, what is this thing? This was found in Judge Jigoku's room? Following departure, all crew members are required to assemble on the main deck at 10 p.m. In order to review evacuation, the drill will take 20 minutes. Crew to resume duties as soon as the drill is over. Wait! This was found in the garbage. What if Gregson was killed during the drill? So there would be no the crewman wouldn't hear the bullet. A small machine part of Mr. Sholmes found in Judge Jigoku's cabin. What is this thing? I don't understand what this thing could be. This was found in Judge Jigoku's room, but what is this thing? I don't know what this thing could be. Is it like a doorknob or something? What could this possibly be? Is there like something that this could possibly match? I don't think it's from the candle. Nothing in Gregson's trunk that suggests that. We're gonna bring up this evacuation drill. I feel that's it. Let's see.
Objection!
Yup, I was right. We got it. Yes, as the court has heard, there was a crewman posted outside Judge Jigoku's cabin. However, we can be sure that contrary to the witness's claim, the guard wasn't there at all times. What? I have here a notice of a particular event that was scheduled to take place aboard the steamship on the 31st. And see, this is really good on Naruhodo's part, because the purpose of a defense lawyer is to create doubt. That's the whole purpose of it, is to create doubt. And so basically, he's saying that, you know, this murder could have taken place inside the cabin there. So my client couldn't have been the one that did it. This is entirely a new possibility here. This is a really good part on his part right now. What? Where did you get that? In the garbage in your room. It's evidence gathered by Mr. Herlock Sholmes. You were acquainted yesterday, if you remember. Herlock Sholmes again. According to this itinerary, after leaving the port of Dunkirk at exactly 10 p.m. and for a period of 20 minutes, all crewmen of the SS Grouse were to gather on deck for an evacuation drill. All crewmen were away from their posts, and during that 20-minute interval, of course, any gunshot emanating from your cabin would have been heard by no one. In summary, Judge Jigoku, you had ample opportunity to commit the crime. Perfect. Good job there. I love when that music kicks in, you're on the right track. A 20-minute window of opportunity. That's an excellent find, Ryunosuke. But it amounts to nothing. Why? Why? Oh, wow. He said what I said. Because the witness clearly stated in his testimony that no incident occurred in his cabin. Oh, come on, Kazuma. There's a bullet hole covered up in the wall. Unless you have some decisive evidence that can show his testimony to be false. Your accusation is nothing more than conjecture. Very true. Well, counsel? Inspector Gregson was killed in Judge Jigoku's cabin that night. I'm certain of it. Because the defense has evidence to prove it. You will present the evidence for the defense at once, counsel. What proof do you have that the victim's life was taken in Judge Jigoku's cabin on the 31st of October? I would say it's the trunk that has blood on it.
Take that!
Bailiff, take this evidence and incinerate it. What? No, that evidence was presented after careful consideration, my lord. Then I'd suggest you take a little longer over your deliberation in future. Otherwise, you may find that you're the one being sent for incineration. I don't understand. There's blood on the case. Is it just me, or is Kazuma's tongue getting sharper by the minute? Don't worry, Mr. Naruhodo. Your mind can only get sharper too. Mr. Sholmes and Professor Mikotoba's visit to Judge Jigoku's cabin yielded a minute piece of evidence that was very nearly overlooked if my memory isn't failing me. You must bring it to mind, Mr. Naruhodo, in a timely fashion, before the bailiff burns everything. You will present the evidence for the defense at once, counsel. What proof do you have that the victim's life was taken in Judge Jigoku's cabin on the 31st of October? It's probably this thing. What is this thing? If we can link this somehow to Gregson. Some kind of machine part. What is this thing? You see these little things all over the place, don't you? It's the part on top of a pocket watch that you twist to set the time, isn't it? It's called the crown, I believe. A watch would be quite useless without one. The crown, like what sits on top of a monarch's head. That's a very grand name for such a tiny part. But actually, yes, Mr. Naruhodo, if this is a crown, I have a feeling I might have seen a monarch around here somewhere with a very bare head. If by monarch you mean pocket watch, then I'm certainly sure you have. Wonder if there's something in the pictures here. That machine, it has to be relevant somehow. But what could it be? A minute piece of evidence that was very nearly overlooked, if my memory isn't failing me. What could that evidence that was overlooked, what could it be? Wait a second, it looks like the crown for the police, but it does look like What do you think, Miss Susato? I feel sure I know exactly what will fit here. Really? I was just thinking precisely the same thing. Oh, we're about to see that little round component. It's actually part of Inspector Gregson's broken pocket watch. Really? I was just thinking precisely that too. Oh? It's actually a lot smaller than I thought. Wow. Yep. Perfect fit. There it is. I knew it. Alright, perhaps you knew it. I'll make a note of this new information at once. A small machine part that Mr. Sholmes found in Judge Jigoku's cabin on the SS Grouse is now clear its missing crown of Inspector Gregson's pocket watch. We got him. Judge Jigoku is finished. I knew it was relevant somehow. I just didn't know what it could be.
Take that!
Judge Jigoku, this was found in your cabin yesterday. What is that? The crown of a pocket watch? A pocket watch? And if you will observe, the victim's pocket watch, which we know what he treasured, is missing precisely that part. It can't be. Moreover, this crown is a perfect fit on the spindle protruding from the victim's watch. Now, the fact this was retrieved from Judge Jigoku's cabin tells us the victim's watch almost certainly broke there. In other words, the victim was killed on the 31st during the 20-minute evacuation drill in the cabin occupied by you, Judge Jigoku. Well, you're razor sharp, aren't you, you young murderer? He's calling us a murderer? Think somebody should look in the mirror. Expertly maneuvered, Ryunosuke. And your argument sounds entirely plausible. At first. Oh no. But rather, like this pocket watch, it's full of cracks. What? And I believe Judge Jigoku feels the same way. I was wrong to acquit you earlier in the year. Sorry? If I'd known that it would result in anyone having to listen to this drivel, I would have declared you guilty just to spare the world your ridiculous bombast. What a scumbag. I think it's clear that the witness will have to give further testimony. When you hear what actually happened in my cabin that night, you'll notice the pitfall into which you've stumbled. Prior to renewed testimony, I would like to clarify one point. The fact that this part of the victim's watch was discovered in your cabin means that you acknowledge he was there, I presume. Yes, I do. Very well then. You may proceed to give your formal testimony about what exactly happened in your cabin aboard the ship on the evening of the 31st of October. Of course, as a man of the law, I have no intention of obstructing justice. That's what all you've been doing. The events in the cabin. I had a guest waiting for me when I returned to my cabin after finishing my evening meal in the dining room. When I walked through the door, a mustachioed Englishman was there, foolishly waving a gun at me. I soon took care of him with Ippon Fro, though. He couldn't wait to run away after that. I imagine his watch was broken when I threw him over my shoulder. It has nothing to do with his murder. The inspector was clearly killed having returned to Britain, because his body was found in London. Well, why didn't you mention this earlier? Ippon Swai? A common jiu-jitsu martial arts technique in my country. I was careful not to use too much force, but the man obviously landed too heavily for his watch to take. So, Ryunosuke Naruhodo, I imagine you can see the flaw in your logic now, can't you? What? The fact that the pocket watch was broken in the witness's cabin in no way proves that the victim's murder took place there. I have no doubt that the inspector intended to kill me. Well, Kazuma is kind of half right. You know, even though the broken watch was found there in the room, or the broken watch part, I should say, it's not proof that Jigoku killed Gregson, but it's really suspicious that that pocket watch meant so much to Gregson. He wound it up every day, he cherished it. He kept that pocket watch in order. And then all of a sudden, one part of his pocket watch was found in Judge Jigoku's room. I highly doubt that Gregson would have left something like that there. I've no doubt the inspector intended to kill me. But he didn't manage to pull the trigger. Yes, because he was merely a tactician, not the Reaper's hand of death. Well, the testimony appears to make perfect sense as far as I can tell. Let me express my deep gratitude for your understanding, my lord. But if this testimony holds, Judge Jigoku will be deemed to have had no involvement in the case. Well, counsel, I really see no reason for wasting precious court time on a cross-examination, because Strongheart is in on it. Sorry, my lord. The defense has a right to cross-examine, and I don't intend to squander that. You're an embarrassment to your countrymen, not knowing when you're beaten. In that case, proceed, Mr. Naruhodo. Now, you guys really see. You see Judge Jigoku's true colors. You see what kind of person he is. He's a really bad guy. The events in the cabin. I had a guest waiting for me when I returned to my cabin after finishing my evening meal in the dining room.
Hold it!
Because the so-called guard post at your cabin door had just let your killer pass, you mean? Apparently, Gregson told the crewman he was a police inspector, which was the truth, of course. He wouldn't have had his identification with him, though. He had his trench coat and mustache, not to mention the bag of chips. I imagine the crewman was convinced. Why are you talking about his mustache? But the man accompanying him would have had 2 swords slung around his waist. You mean me? Who else? Yes, that's true. You would have hoped the sight of a few swords might have set off alarm bells in the guard's head. The point is, I left the cabin before its occupants returned, and I immediately disembarked the ship. Certainly, all I can tell you is that only the inspector was waiting for me when I arrived back at my cabin. As you enter without taking any inkling of suspicion. That's right, none whatsoever. When I walked through the door, a mustached Englishman was there, foolishly waving a gun at me.
Hold it!
Obviously, you're talking about Inspector Gregson. Yes, though at the time, I didn't know the man's name. And there was no time for introductions. I value my life over manners. By which you mean that the inspector was there to assassinate you, I suppose. That was certainly the impression, given by the gun pointing in my direction. But I've never seen the muzzle of a revolver shake about of so much in my life. Anyone would think the man had never shot somebody before. Believe it or not, most of us haven't. Anyway, there was no time to call for the help of the crewman at the door, so I dealt with the man myself. I soon took care of him with an Ippon Sui Fro. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Can you guys tell me how to pronounce that, if anybody knows, in the comments? Though he couldn't wait to run away after that.
Hold it!
Even though the man had a gun, that was a very brave move, wasn't it? My Ippon Sui is faster than a bullet, I can assure you. But surely all that commotion caused the crewman to come in, didn't it? Yes, of course. He burst immediately without knocking. The inspector hurled himself at the stocky fellow and just managed to slip past him to make his escape. Oh yeah? Let's bring in the crewman as a witness. Well, the ship is probably in another country now. But I wish we had the crewman as a witness to corroborate that. The outstanding guard does it again. Luckily, there aren't many situations I can't get out of using a quick Ippon Sui Fro. And also, is that like a real, does anyone know, is that like a real jujitsu technique? I imagine his watch was broken when I threw him over my shoulder. It has nothing to do with his murder.
Hold it!
The crown snapped off and the glass covering the face of the watch was cracked. Preferable to the man's head being pulled off or his spine cracking, wouldn't you say? Not that the man was spared for long, a bullet to the chest soon saw to that. But the point is, the broken pocket watch doesn't prove that a murder took place, but it's really suspicious. Absolutely not. All the watch proves the power of my jujitsu, Fro. Whatever you say, it doesn't quite ring true that no shot was fired in the cabin, because there was an obvious bullet hole in the wall. What are you talking about? That's what the star of your lowbrow detective stories told you, is it? Well, I don't care for such fiction. Haven't you worked it out yet, you little stripling? No murder took place in my cabin. You see what a bad person Jigoku really is. and we thought this guy was a good guy. The inspector was clearly killed having returned to Britain because his body was found in London.
Hold it!
But there's no evidence that proves the victim ever returned to London alive. Just take a moment to think that idea of yours through now, stripling. What? If the inspector was killed on the steamship in France, how on earth could he have gotten back to Britain? They probably had him in some kind of carriage. That's what I think. The body's probably hidden in a carriage. Some kind of big box or maybe like that. When people die, their bodies remain in the same spot. It's a devil of a thing, unless they're moved by somebody else. Well, then, obviously the culprit must have moved the body. Yup, they did. How exactly? Some kind of box, putting inside a carriage and then taking him to the location, but keeping him in the fridge until the ship docked. Carrying a corpse off a ship in your arms would raise a few eyebrows at least, don't you think? Well, yes, that's true, but all passenger luggage is inspected when it's unloaded from arriving vessels. And I would like to think that the border police would query the corpse of an English gentleman as hand luggage. If the murder had taken place aboard the ship, you would imagine the body would have been disposed of at sea. There would be no sense in risking being caught by attempting to transport the body back to Britain. That's killed that idea then. What Casma is saying is true. They could have dumped the body out at sea, but the body was specifically preserved just to take down Barrack Van Zeeks. That was the whole purpose of it. Somebody wanted to frame Zeeks, but why? But perhaps not. Miss Susato? We've heard that the first-class passengers were under constant scrutiny by the crewmen posted to guard them, which would mean that the culprit had no opportunity to dispose of the body in the sea. Yes, that's true. So transporting the body to Britain may have been the only viable alternative. Dear me, you really are new to this, aren't you? I thought I'd been perfectly clear, but it seems I'm going to have to explain it in words you can't understand. I think I ought to alter my testimony, with your consent, of course, my lord. I have no objection. State your amended testimony now. There's no possible way I could have transported the victim's corpse back to Britain.
Hold it!
There's an idea. Think about it, stripling. All passengers and crew disembarked at the same time and passed through the same checks at the border. The symposium guests were then driven straight to the hotel in carriages organized by the ministry. Unless the ministry was in on it, and it was one of those carriages. And we met you as soon as you arrived in the hotel. So you did. Well then, remind me, did I have a corpse over my shoulder at the time? Wait a second. I really hope Gregson wasn't inside this. Oh man, just thinking about that, oh no, I really hope that's not the case. Gregson's body isn't here when they took the picture? Oh man, I really hope that's not the case. What? No, remember, that case that Jigoku had, a body can fit in there, and Jigoku's a really big guy. So, if Jigoku is that big and he can fit in that case, Gregson definitely could. So we're in agreement then. I couldn't possibly have brought the inspector's body back to Britain. Unless, of course, they're developed some clever device these days to install things from A to B. Funny you should say that. Professor Harebrain's intervention didn't actually work, if you remember, Mr. Naruhodo. Invention, yes, of course. The defense has become unusually quiet, I notice. Yes, because there's really nothing more to say. So that's his story. Well, I suppose if you think about it. Whenever you drop a teacup in the office and it breaks, we don't say Mr. Naruhodo must have been murdered there, do we? Is that a veiled threat about what might happen to me if I break another one? And the fact is that Inspector Gregson's body was found in a little room on Fresno Street. If he really was killed in Judge Jigoku's cabin, the body would have to have been moved somehow, obviously. Transporting a dead body over a country border, that would be impossible for the majority of people. So there must have been some special circumstances that made it possible for a culprit then. That could be a vital realization, I think, Mr. Naruhodo. There's no possible way I could have transported the victim's corpse back to Britain. I really hope Gregson isn't in that trunk. Imagine if Gregson's body was in that trunk when they took the photo. Oh my god. That's just, I really hope it's not the case, because remember, he hid in the trunk, like I said. Jigoku, Jigoku is massive. He's a massive guy. And he was able to hide in the trunk. Gregson's not that big of a guy. So Gregson's body could have been put in the trunk, but how did he get it off the ship, though? Let's see this.
Objection!
Oh no. Am I right? Oh no. I don't want to think about it that Gregson's body was in that trunk the entire time. There's no possible way you could have moved Inspector Gregson's body, you say? I would say the opposite is true. And what's that supposed to mean? Far from being impossible for you to do. The transporting of Inspector Gregson's body back to Britain is something only you could do. Wait! It's because he's a foreign diplomat. So he might not have been searched because of that. What are you talking about, Ryunosuke? Right, I just remembered that. As well as being a judge, Mr. Jigoku is also Japan's Minister of Foreign Affairs. Which means he's exempt from having his luggage searched when he enters the country. That's it, there. That's a major loophole. Nobody should be exempt from having their luggage searched. We learned that when we first met you upon your arrival in London. Well, all those passport checks and luggage searches at the border took a lot of time. I must say, I'm very envious of you, your ministerial status. You didn't have to go through any of that, did you? Ah, I knew you were jealous. Ha ha ha. Gregson's body was in that trunk in the hotel lobby. I presume you recall this, Judge Jigoku. It's a photograph we took in the foyer of the hotel to mark the occasion, and that's gonna be his undoing. As the court will know, you have with you your large travel trunk. Large enough, in fact, to have a corpse inside. Mr. Naruhodo, surely you're not suggesting. Yup. Oh man, this is so creepy. I'm afraid I am, yes. 3 days ago, when we were chatting innocently with the new arrivals from Japan in the hotel, the body of Inspector Gregson was just meters away from us, inside Judge Jigoku's trunk. Oh my god. Order, order, order in court. I'm skeptical, counsel, that a grown man's body could fit inside even the largest travel trunk. Judge Jigoku fit in there, and Judge Jigoku is much bigger than Gregson. It could. Because I happen to know that the witness himself, a man of considerable size, fits inside his trunk. And verifying that will be extremely simple, wouldn't it, Judge Jigoku? But inside his trunk, how horrifying. And after we'd spoken with you at the Great Waterloo Hotel, you had the opportunity to visit the apparent scene on Fresno Street. Taking your trunk with you in a cab to deposit the inspector's body. I don't have to listen to this nonsense. Yes, you do. Dr. Gori, the coroner who examined the body, has confirmed the possibility. She's acknowledged that there are signs that steps may have been taken to disguise the true time of death. The onset of the body's decomposition could have been delayed by storing it in a refrigerator. Counsel, as I remember explaining yesterday, refrigerators of the requisite size are few and far between. The refrigerator was on the ship, because a ship, when it's going at sea for months and months, they're going to be transporting food and other perishable items on there. They need to refrigerate it. It's on the ship. That's where a large refrigerator section is. Yes, I'm sure they are. But one place they're certainly found is on large ocean liners. Such ships are equipped with electrically refrigerated cold rooms to keep food fresh on their long sea voyages. And the SS Grouse is no exception. Professor Mikotoba told me about it only yesterday. Well, Judge However much you prolong this debate, you can't eliminate the truth. All the evidence points to you being the killer. What's so funny? Well, this is all very heartening. I can see that it was a wise move, letting Asogi and you embark on this study tour. What are you talking about now? Logical reasoning, of course. All court proceedings will be built on logical reasoning in the new century. And I can see that you've both laid firm foundations for that already. Judge Jigoku, please stop diverting attention from the issue at hand. The defense has made an accusation against you. How do you respond? Respond? There's really no need for me to respond, is there? Why ever not? Because before you can even begin to answer the question of when the victim was killed, you must first establish one key fact. Where was the victim killed? It's quite logical. In your room. The actual scene of the crime. The prosecution's stance is unaltered. The killing took place in Fresno Street when the gunshot was heard. As the accused, Barrick Van Zeek shot the victim at point-blank range. Since no tangible evidence exists to disprove the prosecution's claim at this time, the defense's deductions amount to little more than an elaborate fairy tale. It's not a fairy tale. I'm afraid that's how the logical reasoning the British are known for really works, young stripling. The victim was shot in that little room on Fresno Street and died instantly. I'm afraid it's the prosecution's claim. That's the only fairy tale here. Oh, how can you say that? Quite simply, because that claim directly contradicts a certain piece of evidence in our possession. Very tantalizing, counsel. I think you'd better explain yourself to the court, don't you? The prosecution claims that Inspector Gregson died instantly when he was shot at the scene on Fresno Street. But this evidence clearly contradicts that claim. The prosecution claims that Inspector Gregson died instantly when he was shot at the scene on Fresno Street. Wonder if it's the trunk this time. I don't want to get another wrong one here. Karuma, the Great Blade. It's such a thing of beauty, I want to gaze on it for hours. The tip of the great sword. Broken. It's such a shame. It's been so meticulously cared for over the years. I can almost hear Karuma's sobs. Kazuma must have really taken a swing for that to happen. The prosecution claims Inspector Gregson died instantly when he was shot at the scene on Fresno Street. I think it's the trunk. It has blood on it.
Take that!
No. Damn. Made a mistake. One piece of evidence that shows it. Perhaps you should try to present the correct one this time, Mr. Naruhodo. A piece of evidence that proves that Inspector Gregson's body was moved. Is there anything I'm not seeing here? This was the helmet that, like, you know how you have the little, to, wind up the pocket watch. We've already seen this before. I've always wondered what the underside of a hairpiece looks like. That doesn't surprise me at all, Mr. Naruhodo. You always want to see what lies beneath, don't you? I'm not sure that's quite how I'd put it. You must have to use lots of bird lime to keep it in place on your head, so it doesn't get blown off in a gust of wind, I mean. That might be a little inconvenient when you wanted to take it off again, don't you think? What could the answer be? I'm kind of struggling on this right now. Was he moved there after? There's one piece of evidence we have that shows the answer to that question surprisingly clearly. Wait, it would be the autopsy report. Hang on, wait 1 second. Maybe the autopsy report, right. he had the rotten fish and chips inside his coat pocket. But I think that's the answer. Because the rotten fish and chips, I remember the coroner, she stated that. But the thing is, though... That would be proof that he was, that he wasn't killed there, but moved. So it would prove that he died on a different date, but... I'm scared about getting another wrong answer here. I have to really think about this now. Oh, man. I got 3 chances here, and I don't want to waste another chance. Let's try the autopsy report.
Take that!
Damn, I hate that it didn't work there. There's nothing like that on this gun. The gun was cold, I remember, when it was found, which shows that it wasn't fired recently. Damn, I'm sorry I'm taking so long here, guys. I'm just trying to think right now what it could be.
Take that!
So it was the photograph, okay. The photograph of the victim in the very location you claimed he wasn't killed. I guess we're gonna be talking about the fish and chips, because I was struggling to find out which one it was, but I guess it's that one. It's the picture there. Because the fish and chips, remember, the fish and chips were rotten in the coat pocket, which means that the fish and chips were there for some time. They weren't fresh, but the body wasn't rotting. The body wasn't decomposing in any way. Yes, but the point is, the posture of the body itself. If Inspector Gregson had been shot there, in that room, It's out of the question his body would have been curled up in a ball like that. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but your logic is flawed. He could easily have adopted that fetal position due to the pain of the shot, which subsequently proved fatal. He died instantly.
Objection!
I'm sorry to disappoint you, Judge Jigoku, but it's your logic that is flawed. What? According to this autopsy report, the victim died instantly, yup. He would have felt no pain, much less have been able to draw himself in that position. Ah. Which begs the question of why the victim's body is curled up in that way. Though the answer should be abundantly clear by now. Yup, he's right. He's right. I didn't notice that. Yeah, he is right. Let's look at that photo one more time. You know, when if somebody is shot, you know, they're not really gonna fall down like that. Like, they're just, if they die instantly, they're just gonna plummet right to the ground. Like, the chances of somebody falling over like that, like when they get shot, like all curled up like that, that's a really good point. I didn't think of that. So I guess I was right on the picture, but my initial theory was wrong, because I was gonna talk about the fish and chips that were rotten in the pocket. But yeah, he's right. Now that you think about it, the way that the body is curled up, it doesn't make sense. You know, it wouldn't be like that unless it was placed like that, it was staged like that. Though the answer should be abundantly clear by now. You're suggesting the inspector's body took on that posture ahead of its arrival on Fresno Street, before it was coldly turned out on the floor, from the inside of a large travel trunk. Because he was in the trunk, right, so that's the posture that he would be inside the trunk. No, you're quite right. The shape of the body, it looks exactly as it's been kept in a confined space. Judge Jigoku, present your trunk for examination. I believe it's very possible it will contain traces of the victim's blood. Ah. Present my trunk? I refuse. No, you don't. What? On what grounds? I'm the Minister of Foreign Affairs from the Empire of Japan. I shouldn't have to put up with this treatment just because of some stripling's baseless accusations. But he said stupid for a moment. In other words, Judge Jigoku, there is blood in your trunk. I decline to answer that. As the Minister of Foreign Affairs, I have privileges that allow me to. At this moment, you're not a government minister. You are a witness in the trial in Britain's highest court, yup. I don't care who you are, or what your status outside this courtroom might be, you will not withhold information. Really good point. Nothing is more important than the truth. Order in the court. Well, Mr. Jigoku, what's it to be? You can't be serious. You did it? Have you no shame at all? Kazuma Asogi. What? Very well, I admit it. I did bring the inspector's body into the country. Inside my trunk, exactly as postulated by the defense. What? You. Dear God, outrageous. So it was you. You admit to Gregson's... No. I admit to nothing more than what I've said. You admit to hiding a body in your trunk, but you're gonna refuse to admit to killing him. Of killing the man, I certainly have no recollection. What on earth is that cryptic statement supposed to mean? Now you see, I merely disposed of the inspector's body, which was left in my cabin. Yeah, and you happened to drop it on Fresno Street, and Barrick happened to get framed for that. Oh yeah. Yeah, you had nothing to do with that, did you, Judge Jigoku? It's absolute nonsense. Now you see, the trial would be over at this point. It'd be over. You know, jury would just deliberate. It will be over. This is probably the most unrealistic thing about the Ace Attorney games. The most unrealistic thing about them is that once you prove your client could not have committed the murder, the trial should be over. It's done. But the way that Ace Attorney is set up is you don't get to end the trial with a not guilty verdict until the right killer is found. until the truth is found, the trial doesn't end. So in this type of situation, the trial will be over. Barrick didn't do it. This guy already admits to transporting the body from the ship. He died on the ship. Barrick wasn't on the ship. You can prove that. Barrick wasn't on the ship, so therefore Barrick couldn't have done it. So the trial's over at this point. Barrick's not guilty. It's done. In order to avoid unwanted attention, as a judicial assistant over there pointed out, I had no chance to throw it into the ocean. So, I decided my only option was to bring it into Britain with me and dispose of it somewhere else. You can't still deny it. If you didn't do it, then who on earth did kill the man? As you know, there was one other person in my cabin that night. He had the opportunity. Oh no, don't tell me you're gonna say Kazuma did it. And moreover, he'd already accepted a mission to take the inspector's life. Oh. That's right. Who else could it have been? It was you, Kazuma Asogi. You. I never thought you'd stoop to this, Shishiro Jigoku. You've taken the words straight out of my mouth, Prosecutor Kazuma Asogi. You thought by leaving the body in my cabin you could pin the crime on me, did you? Well, the prosecution counsel's already admitted to visiting the witness's cabin on the night in question. This is such a mess. Now the prosecutor is getting accused of murder? Yes, on an assassination mission, no less. This is such a mess. You wouldn't. So, what do you make of that, young stripling? You've heard my testimony now, and that's all I have to say on the matter. I'll admit to nothing more. I don't believe this. Counsel for the defense. What is your position now? The court awaits your response to witness's assertion. The assertion that on the night in question, the victim's assailant was in fact Mr. Kazuma Asogi. Now you see, this isn't something that a judge would ask a defense lawyer. Do you think that he was the one who did it? It's something that a judge wouldn't really ask. And the thing is, it's not really our place to judge Kazuma. Our place is to defend Barrick Van Zieks, who's our client. So the only thing that, you would say in this type of situation is, my client didn't do it. That's the only thing you'd really say in this situation. My client couldn't have possibly have done it because he was not on the ship. I shouldn't have to argue whether Kazuma did it or not now. This isn't a dead end, it seems to be. The answer is right in front of me. It comes down to Jigoku or Kazuma. Both of them had the opportunity to kill Gregson, but only one of them did it. And I'm just a step away from proving who. Very well. The defense is ready to respond to the assertion put forward by Judge Jigoku. The idea that the victim's murder could have been committed by Prosecutor Asogi is... Oh, man. Oh, man, this is the hardest question in Ace Attorney right now. This is the hardest question. Out of all the questions, because you're asked a lot of questions in this game which you have to choose an answer to. This is probably the hardest question that you're asked. Could Kazuma have done it? The answer is, it's possible, sure. I don't think he's a murderer. I don't think he has anything to do with it. But is it possible? It is possible. He was on the ship. He knew that Gregson was there. But did he do it? No. I doubt it. This is what's... Oh, man. What do I choose? Because by saying impossible, you're denying that possibility. But by saying possible, you're basically alluding to the fact that Kazuma could have done it, which Kazuma might get really angry for, that you're his best friend, and now you're accusing him of potentially being a murderer. Oh my god, what a mess. This is a mess. I think that this is my favorite Ace Attorney case of all time now. This case right here is my favorite one. I played the original Ace Attorney games, and my favorite case before this game came out was the fifth case in the first game. The fifth case in the first game with the serial killer and the corrupt police chief. That was my favorite one. But now this one's definitely my favorite one now. But now, what the hell do I choose? Like, let me know in the comments what you guys would have chosen. Like, I don't know. Like both of them are reasonable answers. It's, oh my god. I'm gonna save. Okay, what do I choose now? Kazuma's sword is missing a tip, and it's inside Gregson's trunk. But what does that mean exactly? Why would Kazuma have slashed Gregson's trunk? My god, this is such a hard choice to make right now. I don't know what to do. If Kazuma was to kill Gregson, I think he would have done it with his sword, not with his with a gun. Kazuma doesn't really carry around a gun. I'm gonna go with impossible. I don't think it's possible. Judge Jigoku, let me remind you of something you said only a few minutes ago. You claim that logical reasoning is the future of judicial process. It is, no question. Well, logical reasoning can prove something here. Namely, that it would have been impossible for Prosecutor Asogi to commit the crime. What? I love when that music kicks in. The court will only accept an argument that is supported by compelling evidence. So present what you have, counsel. What proof is there that allegedly demonstrates the impossibility of Prosecutor Asogi's involvement? It's the sword. But how would that have proven that Kazuma's not guilty? Those are the only two pieces of evidence that are linked to Kazuma. The trunk and the sword. He would have killed him with a sword, not with a gun.
Take that!
You're making the evidence weep here, Ryunosuke, Naruhodo. Oh no. Well, I like how he's getting mad that I'm trying to defend him. Man, this is getting hard. Okay. A member of the crew was on sentry duty outside the first-class cabin, so as long as the guard was there, it would have been impossible to fire a shot without it being heard. And that very much narrows down when the crime could have been committed. It's definitely the hardest case. Wait, the answer is right here. This is it. Date of departure within 1 week from 31st of October. And the... 31st of October, 10 p.m. Kazuma, it's almost November 1st by that point. Kazuma would have had to have been off the ship. If this is the passport for Kazuma and yep. This is the passport for Kazuma and Gregson. I hope this is right now.
Take that!
Oh no. The evacuation drill?
Take that!
Yes, it's the evacuation drill. But the thing is, though, is I think I could have used the passport in the same one. So, this itinerary for crew members, the SS Grouse, my lord, this is conclusive proof. An itinerary, how does that prove anything? Judge Jigoku, the moment you acknowledge that you found the victim's body in your cabin, this itinerary suddenly became much more significant. What? Why? On the night in question, as always, a crewman sentry was on guard outside your cabin door. As long as he was there, nobody could have fired a shot inside the cabin. Absolutely, because it's inconceivable that the guard wouldn't have heard it and come to investigate. So that tells us that the crime must have taken place when the guard was elsewhere. And that narrows it down to the 20 minutes just after 10 o'clock, indicated on the itinerary. Yes, I see no flaw in your reasoning so far. But the crucial point is this. When the evacuation drill took place, the steamship had already put to sea from the port of Dunkirk. Now, clearly the murder could only have been committed by somebody who was aboard the vessel at the time. But Prosecutor Asogi stated in yesterday's proceedings, I didn't come to Great Britain to take anyone's life, so I left Gregson and disembarked the ship. I spent that night at a boarding house in the town, and returned to England the following morning. The boarding house is gonna have the log, which I'm sure the court will agree is conclusive proof that Kazuma Asogi couldn't possibly have carried out the killing. No, absolutely not. I don't accept that at all. That's the Ace Attorney theme right now it's playing. We're on the right track. What do you mean? The boys just stated that to exonerate himself. We can't trust that he really disembarked the vessel. Check the log at the boarding house. Remember, he said he filled out his name at the boarding house. Obviously, after he left my cabin, he hid himself somewhere nearby on the ship. Just waiting for his chance to come back and finish the... No, that's out of the question. Isn't it, Kazuma? As the defense rightly recalls, I disembarked the vessel and spent the night in a boarding house in Dunkirk, and he made a log there. And as I said yesterday, I signed my name in the accommodations registry book. All extremely easy to verify, and undeniable proof. No, There's no escape this time. You can forget that you're a judge or a government minister. It's time you gave the court an honest answer, as a common man. You killed Inspector Tobias Gregson and transported his corpse back to Britain. Then you dumped the body in the room on Fresno Street and made it look as if the murder had happened there. That's what really happened, isn't it, Chishiro Jigoku? It was that damn trial 10 years ago. That's when all this began. He's gonna break the witness stand again, looking back now. My fate was decided that day. I was doomed already. He broke the witness stand again. What's going on? It's over. My life is over. A British assassin to eliminate a professor in Japan. A Japanese assassin to eliminate a detective in Britain. Both assassins will use diplomatic immunity to evade conviction and return safely to their homelands. The assassin exchange request arrived from Britain about 1 year ago. Though it was hardly a request, it was a demand. And for that, you decided to recruit Mr. Asogi. But things didn't go according to plan. Your chosen assassin never made it to Britain, and you found yourself unable to dispatch a replacement, because I was already on my way to Britain at that time in Kazuma's place. And that left me with only one option for carrying out my obligation. To eliminate the mark myself, personally. Of course, there was but a single opportunity for me to do that. The International Forensic Science Symposium, I presume. That's right. I decided it would be safest to carry out the plan before my arrival in Britain, so I enlisted the help of my British counterpart, and made arrangements for a pretext that would take the inspector to Dunkirk. To lure the man in, he was given a sham mission by the Reaper. What? The Reaper? But there's only one person who could have done that. The mastermind of the entire operation. The Reaper himself. Ah. So, that means that the assassin exchange was... It was all planned by the Reaper. I'm not at liberty to say anything about my British counterpart. Anyway, the inspector accepted the Reaper's mission and dutifully infiltrated my cabin on the steamship. But it was all a trap designed to lead him to France and his own death. Oh, how awful. It was past 9 o'clock when I returned to my cabin from the dining hall that evening. I didn't give him time to attack me. I choked him until he lost consciousness. But there was a guard just outside the door, so I left it at that for the time being. Even the slightest noise might have aroused suspicion, so I bided my time, waiting. For the 20 minutes after 10 o'clock. I had intended to finish him by strangulation, but moments before I had the chance, he suddenly came around and went for me in a reckless move. I received a British issue gun 16 years earlier, being a member of the judiciary as a visiting student. That's why it didn't have a serial number. I never imagined that to use it for something like that. So the revolver belongs to you, does it? Then the victim was killed inside your cabin on the SS Grouse. Which begs the question of why you arranged for his body to be discovered in the room on Fresno Street. The young judicial assistant over there has already answered that question. There was no way I could take the body up on deck to throw it over the side. But that doesn't explain why you took it to Fresno Street specifically. There's so many other places you could have dumped it. And to go to all that effort to frame Barrack, that's precisely where all the crewmen were gathered for the evacuation drill. So before the first-class cabin sentries returned, I took the corpse to the refrigeration room. And then on arriving in Dover, you concealed the body in your trunk in order to smuggle it past the border police. I knew I needed to take steps if the police were to be convinced when the body was found in London. In that case, you must have known. You must have had intimate details of Inspector Gregson's intended schedule. Yes, my British counterpart sent me everything I needed to know. The inspector was due at Fresno Street at 5 o'clock that afternoon, in order to meet a man by the name of Hugh Boone, from whom he would take back his police identification. Ah, I decided that man would be the perfect person to set up as the culprit. So I took a hackney carriage over there with the body still in my trunk. That must have been just after we took this photograph of you at the hotel then. Yes, I wasn't expecting a welcoming committee. I was more than a little nervous. On Fresno Street, I spotted a young girl selling little firecrackers. Miss Venus, of course. I conceived of the candle trick there and then. So I donned a simple disguise and approached the girl to buy enough firecrackers to replicate a gunshot. What sort of disguise? For some reason, the inspector had a bright red hairpiece in his own traveling case. So I put that on. Although I suspect I drew more attention to myself than I would have otherwise. The hairpiece we found at the scene. The inspector had it ready for the Red-Headed League investigation. I only arrived at the room at around 4:45. So I quickly placed the body on the floor, moved the notice board, and set up a little candle trick. I arranged it so the firecrackers would go off with a bang around 15 minutes later. So that Mr. Boone, who was due to arrive at 5, would walk straight into a trap. Except, at that last moment, I made a careless blunder. What was that? I imagine it was the bag of fish and chips. Ah. I didn't notice that it had fallen out of his overcoat pocket when I moved the body to the refrigeration room. I put it back into his pocket the following morning, but... well, it seems that the warmth of the heated cabin had accelerated the decay of the fish. Anyway, that's everything. All the sordid details of what I did. I've heard enough. We've arrived at the truth about the murder of one of the country's most capable and respected police inspectors. The witness will be tried in the coming days. For a crime of such a vile nature, you can expect the most severe penalty. An exchange of assassins. What a foolhardy idea. Mr. Jigoku, one last detail. Who was your counterpart in Britain? Who was the mastermind behind the assassin exchange? Nothing you say now can make matters any worse for you. Just tell us. Enough! I've already told you that I cannot say. Even though as things stand, you may very well never set foot in your homeland again. It's Lord Strongheart. He's hoping that Lord Strongheart bails him out. What are you waiting for? Can't we get this over with now? It's finished. All of it. I'm finished. Then, in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I now pronounce the findings of this court. This man before us has admitted to the willful murder of Tobias Gregson. Sashiro Jigoku, it is the opinion of this court that you should be found guilty. What about Barrick, though? And may I remind all those present of the strict confidentiality demanded by this closed court. What about Barrick? You didn't declare him not guilty. Moments ago, Mr. Jigoku signed a written confession, admitting to the murder of Inspector Gregson and the subsequent conveyance of the body. In short, the defendant's innocence has therefore been established beyond doubt. Wonderful. Well done, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes, thank you. We didn't find out who the British mastermind is. Is something wrong? I'm just a little troubled by his silence. The true identity of the Reaper of the Bailey, and this extraordinary assassin exchange. We do remain in the dark about these mysteries. However, in so far as the indictment brought against the defendant in this trial, we have reached a conclusion. I have every intention of pursuing both mysteries. As a prosecutor. As you wish. Now, for the formal adjudication. I hereby declare the defendant, Barrick Van Zieks.
Objection!
What? Kazuma, why are you objecting? The prosecution calls for adjudication to be deferred. Why? Counsel? There's no reason for that. Lily, the guy just Jigoku admitted to the murder. The accused's innocence hasn't been fully established at all. No, it has. Jigoku admitted to the murder. And therefore, it would be wrong to deliver a verdict at this time. That is the prosecution's unwavering position. What? But Judge Jigoku has already confessed. Nevertheless, don't tell me he's gonna say that Barrick is the mastermind. That's what he's gonna say. Barrick Van Zieks has committed crimes for which he must be punished. Well, it would appear you have information that the court needs to hear, Prosecutor Asogi. Certainly, the murder of Inspector Gregson was actually carried out by Shishiru Jigoku. But it's clear from the witness's testimony that he was coerced into complying with the plot, into this sick, merciless assassin exchange. That may be true, but... So what I want to know is, who coerced Jigoku? Who was pulling the strings? Don't tell me it's Barrick. The victim went to France having been ordered on a mission for the Reaper, only to be murdered. In other words, the mastermind behind the assassin exchange is someone in a position to give such an order. As we've already established, the Reaper himself. Well, certainly, that would appear to follow. The prosecution hereby formally accuses the man in the dock, Barrick Van Zieks, of being the Reaper of the Bailey, and furthermore, I'm going to prove his guilt, beyond all reasonable doubt. What? What? Order, order, order. The Reaper of the Bailey is a long-standing mystery, Counsel. Are you suggesting that you have some new information with which to build a case? Scotland Yard has already investigated Lord Van Zieks very thoroughly in that regard, and they found no evidence whatsoever to substantiate the claim that he is the Reaper. Perhaps, but circumstances have now changed. What do you mean? It's already been established that the assassin exchange was negotiated with Jigoku by the Reaper himself, which means we now have a new line of questioning by which to identify definitively the man's identity. That is the prosecution's intention here. I must say, I'm surprised by quite how tenaciously you appear to want to besmirch my name. You are guilty of an unforgivable crime, Lord Van Zieks. And I will bring you to justice for it, whatever it takes. That explains Kazuma's silence before. He'll stop at nothing to finish what Lord Van Zieks unwittingly started 10 years ago. Very well. While it's extremely irregular, I will on this occasion grant the prosecution further opportunity for witness testimony. Oh no. The defendant will disclose any and all involvement he had with the Reaper and the assassin exchange. I thank you, my lord, for guiding the court so wisely. I hereby declare this court to be in session for a supplementary hearing. Oh no. This is bad. Pray turn a blind eye to discourtesy, as I verified his violent, unremitting accusation hasn't soured the contents of my hallowed chalice. Lord Van Zieks? I first had to suffer the pseudonym of the Reaper 10 years ago now, and ever since that time, I've endured the weight of implied guilt that's gone with it. So I welcome the chance to testify now, and crush those allegations once and for all. Good. Then let justice decide, Lord Van Zieks. The prosecution seeks to begin building its case by calling the accused to the stand as the primary witness, in order that he may answer the accusation brought by the prosecution that he is the Reaper of the Bailey. And what says the defense? Putting the defendant in the witness stand can be extremely dangerous. And Kazuma-sama is so emotional at the moment. He's not thinking logically. You're right, that he's not himself. But I knew it would be like this. And I came here today determined to face him through whatever might arise. As a lawyer, and as his friend. Then that's what we must do. The defense has no objection, my lord. Very well. Defendant, you will take the witness stand. and give formal testimony on the subject of your involvement with the Reaper and the Assassin Exchange. As you wish, my lord. Witness testimony. The Reaper and the Assassin Exchange. I've never taken the life of another, nor have I instructed another to kill. I've been investigating the truth behind the Reaper for years, and while I was aware of Gregson's involvement, that's the reason why I went to Fresno Street that day and how I came to discover the body. The point is, no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. Clearly, therefore, there's no reason to suspect me of being behind the Assassin Exchange. So you deny all accusations by the prosecution, both that you are the Reaper of the Bailey and that you masterminded the Assassin Exchange. I acknowledge that the public at large believes me to be the Reaper. However, that's a fallacy, which I alone am in a position to forswear. Naturally, the prosecution believes the testimony just given by the accused to be untrue. Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Yes? Let me ask you, why are you here? What really brings you to this courtroom? The truth. A desire to uncover the truth. Wow, he said it. Even as if the truth proves your client to be guilty? From all my experiences in the courtroom, I've come to realize something. The truth can't be hidden. Sooner or later, it will come out. So it's always my intention to work with my client in pursuit of the truth. I want you to remember what you just said. Enough dilatory chatter. Counsel for the defense, proceed to cross-examine the witness. Ah, yes, my lord. Well, you wouldn't really be cross-examining your own client. I know exactly what you're thinking, Kazuma. I know you're just waiting to point it out. The contradiction, you're convinced, lies somewhere within the man's testimony. I've never taken the life of another, nor have I instructed another to kill.
Hold it!
So you're not what the general public refers to as the infamous Reaper of the Bailey. Exactly. Don't imagine for a moment that the court will be satisfied with a one-word answer on this. I realize that. If you're intending to comment on every sentence, this could take a while, Kazuma. Didn't you find it disturbing, though, that one by one, defendants who'd been acquitted after your unsuccessful prosecutions were killed? Let me answer that question by posing another. If one by one, defendants who'd been acquitted after your successful defense were killed, would you find that disturbing? Disturbing? I couldn't possibly say how that would make me feel. A one-word answer like that. Exactly. Well, that told me. But even though I'm not the Reaper, that doesn't mean I ignored all the hearsay. I've been investigating the truth behind the Reaper for years, and I was aware of Gregson's involvement.
Hold it!
You say for years. How long exactly? Since the very first time the Reaper influence was felt in this courtroom. 10 years ago now. And your investigation led you somewhere to Inspector Gregson, you're saying. I didn't want to believe it. He was a personal acquaintance. We'd worked on cases together in the past. A friend, even. It felt like a betrayal, but I demanded permission to search his office at the yard without his knowledge. Which is when you found the secret notebook, is it? It's when I first learned of the location he noted only as Grouse and the appointment at 5 p.m. on the 31st. Though I didn't know the significance of those details at the time. So now we're at the nub of the matter. As it turns out, the significance for me personally was very unfortunate. That's the reason why I went to Fresno Street that day and how I came to discover the body.
Hold it!
You know how I know that Barrick isn't the Reaper? It's because he's on trial, and Jigoku was before trying to condemn Barrick. Jigoku knew that Barrick was on trial. But why did you go to that specific location? I thought that if it was the Reaper's headquarters, then by turning up there at 5 o'clock, I would catch whoever was involved red-handed. Sadly, all that was awaiting me was the inspector's corpse. Yes, even though it wasn't designed for you, you walked straight into the trap set by Jigoku. Exactly. Jigoku had intended to implicate Hugh Boone, but unhappily for me, I arrived at the scene first. Ha, ridiculously careless blunder. Moved on to just throwing insults around, I see then, Kazuma. Think what you will, it doesn't change the truth. The point is, no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson.
Hold it!
There is a link between you and Gregson, though. Of course. We were close acquaintances. We'd worked on numerous cases together. I considered the man to be a mentor of sorts. He taught me a number of important lessons. He did? Such as what? Where to buy good fish and chips, and such like. Well, that was convincing. Dr. Wilson was a coroner, of course, but that was some time in the past. In any case, I understand it was several years ago now that he was invited to work in a Japanese university. That's right. He was a visiting professor at the Imperial Yume University in Tokyo. It should be unambiguously clear then that no link exists between myself and him. In other words, I had no motive for sending some assassin across the ocean to kill the man. It sounds plausible enough, and I want to believe it. But something about this just doesn't quite sit right with me. Clearly, therefore, there's no reason to suspect me of being behind the assassin exchange.
Hold it!
Certainly, as it stands, there's no evidence to suggest that you concocted the scheme.
Objection!
But as it stands, we have only the accused's insistence of his innocence. Sorry? Perhaps there is some reason that would explain why he masterminded the assassin exchange. And if a reason could be established later in these proceedings, then the accused's claim in this testimony that he wasn't involved would amount to perjury. Well, yes, that's true, but perjury is lying to the court. Clearly, Kazuma-sama intends to identify a reason and use it to make his case. So if we don't identify something first, he'll gain the advantage. This could be dangerous. I think I know the connection. Convincing testimony by Lord Van Zeeks. Certainly, with no apparent connection between the three men, there's no way to establish a motive. The testimony seems unassailable as far as I can see. Oh dear me, with a bleak expression. I agree. There doesn't appear to be any particular link between them at first glance. But with the inclusion of one other person, I must be overthinking it, surely. Another person, Mr. Naruhodo. Clint Van Zeeks, his brother that died 10 years ago. I need to think back over all the information we've gleaned so far. Alright, and I'll review my notes about the case and all the evidence in the court record. Could it be that Lord Van Zeeks has something to hide after all? Yup. Look at this. This is his brother, Clint Van Zeeks. Clint Van Zeeks. And remember, it was Mikotoba that wrote this, but the coroner was Wilson. So this is the link between them. Clint, that was Zeke's brother that died 10 years ago, 31st of May, between 9 p.m. and midnight. Deaths from a single stab wound to the heart. Other superficial external wounds indicative of a duel. Recent scarlet ink stains visible on little and ring fingers on the right hand, but no document and corresponding ink was found. Vital evidence recovered from the victim's stomach during autopsy. Credit to Inspector Gregson for petitioning so doggedly for the autopsy's procedure. No internal trauma noted anywhere in the body. This is the connection. I'm sure of it. I'm gonna save here just in case, because I only got one chance. Let's see if I'm right. Oh, didn't want to press hold it. Okay, just skip this. We've already seen this before. I'm scared to bring up this autopsy.
Objection!
Yup, I was right. What is this? An autopsy report. Wait, this is 10 years old. From the autopsy of Lord Clint Van Zeeks. What? My brother's autopsy report? I'm pleased to see the defense doesn't intend to run from the undeniable truth. Order in court. What reason do you have for presenting a 10-year-old autopsy report here, counsel? This, the autopsy report of the professor's final victim, is an indelible link between Inspector Gregson, Dr. Wilson, and the defendant. Not that accursed name again, the professor. I've personally researched all of the court records relating to that case. I know that at the time, autopsy was considered sacrilege to the victim's souls. And for a member of the aristocracy like Lord Clint Van Zeeks, it was unthinkable. But someone implored the powers that be to allow the autopsy to go ahead, Inspector Gregson. Why did Inspector Gregson want that autopsy done so badly of Zeke's brother? He declared he was certain he would obtain conclusive proof from the procedure. And it was Dr. Wilson who conducted the autopsy. His signature is clearly visible in the document. As promised by Gregson, the autopsy did indeed produce evidence. Evidence that conclusively proved Gregson Asogi was guilty of the murders. In my brother's dying moments, he mustered all his remaining strength to leave that vital clue behind. Indeed, that was the key to indicting the professor for his crimes and the conclusive evidence that convicted him. But what is this conclusive evidence? Everyone keeps talking about how the autopsy proved Gregson did it. But what is this conclusive evidence? I want to hear this. It enabled Lord Van Zeeks to avenge his brother's senseless death with a marvelous victory in court. A marvelous victory, was it? I wonder if that's really true. What? Could the same be said if it turned out that the key piece of evidence in question was in fact fabricated? If the inspector, the coroner, and the prosecutor all colluded together to cast an innocent Japanese man as a mass murderer and send him to his death. That's outrageous. And now, 10 years later, for some reason, the secret has been threatened and needs protecting. I think that Wilson and Gregson conspired and fabricated some kind of evidence to frame Genshin. But why? Perhaps it was because Genshin had some kind of problem with Jigoku. Which is why the inspector and the coroner had to be silenced, isn't it? By someone in power in Japan and in Britain. Using the two killers recruited for the assassin exchange. But that argument makes no sense. Why would Barrack want Genshin framed for his own brother's murder? Unless he killed his own brother, which I highly doubt it. Order at once. 10 years ago, my father was convicted in this very courtroom as a mass murderer, to be sentenced to death. But it was all a sham, and I swore myself that I'd prove it. Which is why I had to come to Britain. Whatever the cost. You'll have to forgive me if I feel compelled to toast this vengeful Nipponese's tenacity of purpose here. However, he who fails to quash his emotions in the courtroom has failed as a lawyer. Come on, Kazuma, you know this won't wash. You're claiming your father was misrepresented in a trial that took place a whole decade ago. You must see that without evidence. That's nothing more than a wild accusation. As it happens, I have evidence. And what is that? What? As the court has heard, I crossed the Channel to France with Gregson on the 31st. I went with him on the pretext of being the assassin recruited to kill Shishiro Jigoku. But my true intentions were to make the inspector tell me the truth. What truth? The truth about the evidence. And he acknowledged what I'd already deduced. There's a closely guarded secret about what went on in that autopsy 10 years ago. What? A secret? I know nothing of any secret. While we waited for my supposed mark in Jigoku's cabin, I drew my clan's illustrious sword Karuma before the inspector's eyes. He very quickly understood what my true motive was. Right, I see. You're that Asogi's young lad, are you? And what? You're gonna cut me down with that thing, is that it? That will very much depend on the answers you give to my questions. I want to know what really happened 10 years ago. The truth, that's all. Before we get into it, let me make one thing clear. I still believe your father was a professor. There's no doubt in my mind. But unfortunately, back then, we didn't have the evidence we needed to make the crime stick. So, you admitted then, the evidence used in my father's trial was fabricated. It was for the good of the country. Anyway, I was just following orders. Orders? What exactly did you do? Speak. I'm not saying another word. Even if your life depends on it. That's right. Even then. So that's when the tip of the sword broke. Oh, Kazuma-sama. If the results of Clint Van Zeek's autopsy were fabricated, then the investigating officer Gregson and the lead coroner Wilson must have known about it. And they can only have been ordered to pervert the course of justice in that way by one man. The man leading the case for the prosecution, Barrick Van Zeeks. In other words, the defendant did have cause to organize this exchange of assassins. Exactly, and as was established earlier, it has to have been the Reaper himself who liaised with Jigoku in Japan to arrange the exchange. Ah. So it follows that the Reaper's true identity can only be that of the man who stands accused in the courtroom today, Barrick Van Zeeks.
Objection!
Kazuma Asogi. What? What you've just told the court. Are you absolutely certain of your facts? Did Gregson really fabricate evidence for that trial 10 years ago? I heard it with my own ears. His shameful admission, but that's not really proof. That's just basically what he's saying he heard. Well, I doubt he's lying, but still, that wouldn't really be proof. In that case, I know the name of the Reaper. What? What? Lord Van Zeeks? I gave no such orders. I know that for certain. Which narrows down the remaining possibilities to one. Lord Strongheart. Lord Van Zeeks isn't the one behind all this. Then yes, there's only one other person who could have done something like that. I believe I know who it is too. You. I just had a feeling this name was going to come up. The true identity of the infamous Reaper of the Bailey is... No. Strongheart. Remember, Strongheart was supposed to be the prosecutor. He was going to be the prosecutor for the Gregson Asogi case. He was going to be that, but Zeeks took it instead. It's Strongheart. There's no one else I can think of.
Take that!
The only person who could have arranged the assassin exchange and manipulated the autopsy results is the Lord Chief Justice himself, Lord Mael Strongheart. What? Lord Strongheart? Yup. Just like I initially thought. Yes, it's true that 10 years ago the defendant handled the prosecution of the professor in court. But he only took over the case after his brother, Lord Clint of Van Zeeks, had been killed. I can only assume that this is the most inappropriate joke in British judicial history. Well, Lord Van Zeeks. 10 years ago, I was very new to my profession, but I had a burning desire to avenge my brother's death, so I pleaded for control of the case. The investigation to that point, the supplication of the lords to allow my brother's corpse to be examined, all the evidence I was given, the autopsy reports, it all came from you. I've spent my life since then believing I was in your debt for the way you stood aside and let me handle the trial. But I see now, I was very much mistaken. It was a hugely influential force that caused the inspector and the coroner to break the law 10 years ago. And that same force was still felt a decade later on the other side of the world by Shishiro Jigoku. Lord Strongheart, everything falls into place when we recognize that you are the Reaper of the Bailey. The court awaits your response, my lord. This may very well go down British judicial history, but I assure you, it is no joke. And the thing is, though, this is the craziest thing, because in the previous Ace Attorney games, the original trilogy, there was guilty prosecutors, but you never had a judge that was guilty. And this is crazy, 2 judges that were guilty. A massive conspiracy. Consider this, a formal accusal by the defense. It doesn't warrant a response. A formal accusal? Don't be absurd. The defense claims are utter nonsense, a wild fantasy at best. You're not going to defend yourself. You claim that there was some wrongdoing of Lord Clint Van Zeek's autopsy. That's utterly untrue.
Objection!
But I heard it from Gregson's own lips. He admitted to it. And where is your evidence? Exactly what I said earlier. What? Gregson's dead now, unless you were thinking of summoning a ghost to the stand. You mean to say, I forget how the system works in your little, backwater country. Wow, what a scumbag. But in the courts of the British Empire, without evidence, there is no case. I have no intention of entertaining some wild fantasy that can't possibly be substantiated by anyone or anything. Arrgh. Order in court. Following Inspector Gregson's murder, and in light of Dr. Wilson's death as well, there's really no one left who could testify about the events of 10 years ago, is there? So that was the real purpose of the assassin exchange. This court has no business raking over the coals of a case that was concluded a decade ago. The accusal brought by the prosecution and defense is categorically denied. He's rigging the trial in his favor right now, because he's the judge. But the thing is, though, that case from 10 years ago is very much relevant. You can't just discard it because it happened 10 years ago. I take it there are no objections. Kazuma. He's more or less waited his whole life for this moment. Is there really nothing else we can do now? Is there no other avenue we can go down in pursuit of the truth about what happened all those years ago? If only there was someone who could testify about Clint Van Zeek's autopsy. There is someone. Wait. Inspector Gregson is dead. Wilson is dead. There is someone. The daughter of the coroner. If she was she even there? There is someone. He's gone to extraordinary lengths to cover his tracks. Even so far as dispatching an assassin all the way to Japan to ensure Dr. Wilson's silence. And Dr. Seif won't say anything against Strongheart. But there's still one ray of hope.
Objection!
Actually, There is one person. One person who could still testify about that autopsy. Don't be ridiculous. There's no one left. Who? Ryunosuke, who? Tell me. Kazuma, Please, this trial can't end. Not yet. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the truth. The person at the defense would like to call to the stand to testify about the autopsy of Lord Clint Van Zeeks. Oh, Mikotoba! No, Mikotoba! It's Mikotoba, because remember, wait. Yup. Mikotoba was the one who wrote the autopsy. But Wilson was the one who signed it. And so Strongheart doesn't know that. He thinks that Wilson was in charge of everything. Mikotoba was there. It's Mikotoba. I'm not even saving here. I'm confident it's Mikotoba.
Take that!
Heaven help us. Another Japanese. An expert in forensic medicine, my lord. Professor Yujin Mikotoba, 16 years ago. He came to London with Shishiro Jigoku and Gensen Asogi as a visiting student. So he knows about that case 10 years ago. And not only that, but he's also in the courtroom. He's watching the trial right now. And what could his testimony possibly tell us? Professor Mikotoba was the primary assistant during the autopsy in question. He was also the person who actually penned the report. Incorrect. The autopsy was carried out by the coroner, Dr. Wilson. No, Dr. Wilson only signed the report. Remember. Where is it? The report from the autopsy the professor's found is signed by Dr. John H. Wilson, who carried out the procedure, though Professor Mikotoba actually penned the report. It was the primary assistant's duty to keep a written record of the coroner's work during the procedure. In actual fact, the coroner immediately read over the report at the end and signed it. In other words, Professor Mikotoba witnessed the entire autopsy from start to finish. The defense demands that Professor Mikotoba be summoned as a witness as a matter of urgency. Whatever really happened in that autopsy laboratory 10 years ago is something only he can tell us. The defense demand is denied. He's rigging the trial in his favor. He's guilty. You know, something has to be done. What? Professor Mikotoba is in London this very moment. We could summon him to the stand in minutes. No, of course he's not going to agree to it. Strongheart has no intention of summoning anyone who knows. He's too concerned about protecting himself. Prosecutor Asogi, let me refresh your memory, as you seem to have forgotten the prosecution's stance. Only minutes ago, you accused the defendant of being the Reaper and of masterminding the assassin exchange. I did, yes. So present your evidence for those claims, and make your case complete. At this time, I don't have the requisite evidence, but that's exactly why we need witness testimony. The professor case is closed. There are no clues in the distant past that will bolster your argument today. You can't close a murder case. That doesn't happen. You can't close that. Murder cases are basically forever. There's no statute of limitations on them. I'm afraid to say, Prosecutor Asogi, that you would appear to be possessed by the spirit of your late homicidal father. What a scumbag. I'm gonna have fun bringing Strongheart down. Now, as I stated earlier, this court has already reached a conclusion with respect to the matter at hand. Inspector Gregson was murdered by Japanese Supreme Court Judge Shishiro Jigoku. As for any hidden circumstances that may exist, they will be investigated in due course by the proper authorities. Yeah, and those proper authorities are going to be intimidated and threatened by you to give the answer that you want.
Objection!
But we all know what will happen. They'll just give the mastermind of the whole venture time to cover his tracks again, like I just said. By which you mean me. Your punishment for this contemptible behavior will be decided at a later date. As for you, Prosecutor Asogi, you will be remanded following these proceedings, willingly, I trust, since you gave your word. Ah. This futile game of revenge is over. Young Master Asogi. Grr. Everyone agrees that Strongheart is guilty. Ryunosuke, Susato, Barrick, and, everyone is united against him now. Everyone is against him. That will be all. I hereby declare... Hold it. Who just did that? Oh, it's Herlock Sholmes. Mr. Sholmes. This is no place for amateur detection, Mr. Sholmes. May I remind you that these proceedings are close to the general public. You will leave the courtroom at once.
Objection.
Mr. Sholmes was instrumental in the apprehension of Shishiro Jigoku before he fled from Europe. The court should hear what he has to say. Lord Mael Strongheart, it's imperative that you refrain from bringing this trial to an end at this stage. Is it really? And why would that be? You need only recall your own words from the opening of the trial to answer that question, if I may. We will stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Surely it can't be that the shock of being accused of being the Reaper yourself has erased that from your memory, can it? The whole truth, sir, has already been uncovered. No, it hasn't. Who's the Reaper, then? We already know it's not Barrick. It would seem that we have a great many important members of the judiciary present here today. I put it to you, my dear fellows, should the trial end at this juncture? After all, why have you been invited to attend? To nod along to the provocations of your superiors? Yeah, now the audience is angry. Order in court. It seems to me that we stand before a door that leads to a new era of legal practices, a door that is ajar. Let us emerge from the shadow of the Reaper's decade-long ascendancy. For you, and you alone, my dear fellows, have the power to push this door open now. The auditors in the gallery have no rights to express an opinion on court proceedings. Silence. Yup, the audience is angry. They know Strongheart is guilty too. Everyone knows he's guilty. He's right. The judge has absolute authority here. Yes, if he calls the trial to an end, it must end. But will that really do? I sense dark things occurring behind the scenes. Dark things indeed. Is there a single person here present who can honestly say he... What? The trial should go on. Summon the witness. That's right. We need to clear this up before the young Japanese fellows... My lord, you assured those present that you would uncover the whole truth here. Vindicate yourself on this outlandish accusation. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That's the very foundation of British law. A toast to my dependable colleagues in the gallery. That's the first time that I actually like it when he gives a toast. Testify. Well, my lord. You hear the voices of British justice, I take it. I think you'll find it will be rather awkward to silence. The court will recess briefly. I have no intention of shrinking from these allegations. Bailiff, arrange for the subpoena of the witness at once. As soon as the gentleman arrives at the courthouse, we shall reconvene. A recess won't be necessary, my lord. Pardon? Mikotoba is a close friend of mine. He accompanies me today and is waiting in the antechamber as we speak. I do believe he's been enjoying a little trip down memory lane, in fact. What? Professor Mikotoba is here in the courthouse? Mr. Sholmes, you didn't know this would happen, did you? My dear fellows, no one is in a better position to answer that question than you, surely. I wasn't just asking for the fun of it, you know. Well, I must thank you for your assistance in this matter, Mr. Sholmes. However, you are of no further use here. Kindly leave the courtroom at once. But of course, in truth, I find myself rather busy now as a result of these developments. Mr. Naruhodo? Ah, yes? I trust you have Iris's little lucky charm with you. Absolutely. It's still in my pocket. She sends her regards, and a reminder. If you find yourself at a dead end, the ears are at your disposal. Just one tug, if you please. Oh, of course. I wonder if Genshin is Iris's father. That would make Kazuma her brother. Is that even possible? Could Genshin be her father? In that case, the trial will continue without delay. Bailiff, show the witness to the stand. So it's Lord Strongheart. He's the Reaper of the Bailey. Where exactly is this trial going to take me, I wonder? Just how deep am I about to be plunged into the blackness of the abyss? Well, I'm ready. I'm ready to head into the heart of this storm and confront whatever horrors it tries to drown me under. Oh, and now we have it. The next part is gonna be the ending. The next part, I'm confident, is gonna be the ending. That's gonna be it. So thank you guys for watching. Man, this case has gotten so crazy. Sholmes has just pretty much saved the day there. So we know it's Strongheart now. Strongheart is behind everything, but why? Why is he behind all these murders? Why does he kill all these people? We're gonna find out the answer to that. And why is Genshin's autopsy report? Why has it been manipulated? Why has there been fake evidence presented? What is all these people's connections? Gregson, Jigoku, Kazuma. What do all these people? What is the connection here? Wilson, Dr. Scythe. There's something massive going on here, and only somebody could pull off a major conspiracy like that, and that'll be Lord Strongheart. So thank you guys for watching. This trial is just getting insane. I'll have the next part for you guys as soon as I can. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care, everyone.